My name is Robert Gregory, and I'm the CEO of the Australian Jewish Association. Today, I'm joined by Matthew Brooks, CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Robert, thanks. It's great to be with you and to be with the folks of Australia.
Thank you. Now, as we do this interview, the shocking news that the Biden administration has refused to veto an anti-Israel resolution at the UN Security Council is just breaking. We've also seen some recent disgraceful comments from the third highest ranked Democrat, Chuck Schumer, hinting at overthrowing the Israeli government. So to start, I'm going to ask, what's the mood like for Jews in the US at the moment, and how would you rate the Democrats' positions on Israel since October 7?
Well, I think the mood of the community since October 7th, and then exacerbated by the events that you just mentioned, but a pattern that is building since the attacks of October 7th is very somber. I think, like Jews around the world, we watched in horror as the events of October 7th unfolded and the true face of evil and barbarism that the world witnessed. Subsequent to that, we've been appalled by the efforts by the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian communities around the world to protest against Israel's right to defend itself and its citizens from these horrific attacks, and to support the terrorists and to support Hamas, which is just absolutely disgusting. We have always been able in the United States to count on the strong and unwavering support of the U.S. administrations in a bipartisan way throughout the years. That reliance on them having our back and having Israel's back and our community's back is now being called into question. And as you said, with the events at the UN today, in which the U.S. Did not veto, but rather abstained with a resolution that can be described as nothing less than pro-Hamas. Basically, it called for an immediate ceasefire by the Israelis with no resulting or offsetting call for the release of the hostages to be done as part of that. Prior to that, the Israelis had expressed their strong opposition to this resolution, and the Biden administration, rather than show courage and show resolve and standing with Israel, chose to exercise their abstention, which is absolutely feckless. And so as a result, there was a senior level delegation from Israel that was coming, led by a War Cabinet member, Minister Ron Dermer, the former ambassador to the United States, and other senior Israelis to meet with the Biden administration and discuss their plans for Rafah. The Prime Minister and the government of Israel withdrew them, pulled back and canceled their trip to the U.S. So clearly, tensions between Israel and the U.S. are at an unprecedented level of difficulty right now. And we may have very well seen on the part of the Biden administration a true rupture in the historic bipartisan support that has existed between the United States and Israel. And then you also overlay that with, as you said, with the speech on the floor of the United States Senate. I've been doing this job for over 35 years. I never thought that I would see a United States senator, let alone a Jewish United States senator. And as you said, the majority leader of the United States Senate come up to the floor and call for regime change in Israel. Basically, he called for the people of Israel to replace Bibi Netanyahu, which is just a red line that I never thought we'd see crossed, and is very, very disturbing and worrisome. And we rightly called him out for this. Interestingly enough, he has not called for regime change in Iran. Interestingly enough, he has not called for regime change in Hamas. Interestingly enough, he has not called for regime change anywhere else except in Israel, where he wants to get rid of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, it's very concerning, and Jews all around the world are watching on with great concern. So I wanted to ask you about your organization, the Republican Jewish Coalition. What work do you do, and especially ahead of the election coming up this year?
So we are, at an important moment right now. I've been saying to our supporters, I've been saying to our staff that this is the moment that the RJC was built for, because so much of what we this is at the intersection of so much of what we do, the integration of advocacy on behalf of the US-Israel relationship and advocating for a strong Israel and a strong US national defense, plus the political component of the work that we do to help elect more Republicans. With the Republican nomination settled now, and we all know that President Trump is going to be our nominee to run again, coupled with the House and Senate races in our legislative races, our role is severalfold. First of all, we're going to do everything we can to re-elect President Trump, and do so with the highest share of the Jewish vote that hopefully he has ever had. We're also going to work hard to replace Chuck Schumer as majority leader in the United States Senate by giving the Republicans a majority. And there's a handful of important races in our United States Senate that will tip the balance of power, hopefully away from the Democrats and to the Republicans. And we're going to play significantly in all those races by advising candidates, by raising money, and by trying to turn out the Jewish vote in those states where the Jewish vote is significant. And then the same thing in the House. Our goal is to help our friends in tough races defend their seats, go on the offense in key House races across the country where we have an opportunity to beat Democrats, and expand our Republican majority in the U.S. House. And then once the election component of what we do is completed, and all these folks, one of the things that's important, as you know, Robert, is elections have consequences, right? And so the reason that we're having the frayed relationships between the United States and Israel now is because Joe Biden is sitting in the White House, and it's not a second term of Donald Trump. Under Donald Trump, there's a reason that we had the embassy moved to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem recognizes Israel capital, and that's because Donald Trump won and Hillary Clinton didn't. The reason we have the Abraham Accords is because Donald Trump won and Hillary Clinton didn't. The reason that we ended the Iran nuclear deal was because Donald Trump won and Hillary Clinton didn't. The reason that the U.S. recognizes Israel's sovereignty on the Golan Heights is because Donald Trump won, Hillary Clinton didn't. So elections have consequences, and we're going to make sure and do everything in our power that we get a Republican president, a Republican, and a greater majority of Republicans in the House, and then use our relationships and our influence to rebuild and re-strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship in 2025.
So you mentioned some of the amazing successes that President Trump had when he was in office, recognizing Jerusalem, the embassy, the Golan Heights, go on and on. How do you answer the critics that say all of a sudden President Trump has changed and now he's not so supportive of Israel? And connected to that, do you think there will be that Jews in America will vote more for Republicans, that there'll finally be the change that people have been hoping for many years?
Well, we've been witnessing that change. I mean, the reality is that Republicans over the last several national elections have continued to make inroads and to get larger and larger shares of the Jewish vote. When I started at the Republican Jewish Coalition, and we were lucky to get 10, 11% of the Jewish vote. We're now getting over 30% of the Jewish vote nationally. But more importantly, in critical battleground states, based on our electoral college, that determine who is going to be the next president of the United States, states like Florida, states like Georgia, for example. In Florida, President Trump got almost 50% of the Jewish vote. He got 44% of the Jewish vote, which is historic. In Georgia, for instance, he got 50% of the Jewish vote. So we are getting equal parity with the Democrats, something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And which is one of the reasons that we're investing the kind of money and effort to continue to move. And certainly, as we see in the Democratic Party with the rise of the left-wing progressives, squad as we call them here in the U.S., and we see an administration, Biden administration, that's walking away from Israel at its darkest hour, we are confident that those trends will continue, and we will continue to build and expand and grow the Jewish vote for Republicans. As to Donald Trump, I don't think there has ever been a better friend and a more pro-Israel president ever in history. And I have no reason to believe that he has changed his views. In fact, he's given multiple interviews in the aftermath of October 7th, where he has reaffirmed his unqualified support for Israel and Israel's right to defend itself, and has called on Israel to do whatever it takes to defeat Hamas, which stands in stark contrast to what we're hearing from the Biden administration.
Yeah, I think President Trump gave another interview about that just today, I think American time.
Israel Hayom, I think he gave a pretty strong interview.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to see. The last question I wanted to ask is, what are some of the, aside from what we've already discussed, what are some of the priorities for both for Jewish voters and for Americans in general in the upcoming election?
Well, I think obviously, the Jewish community cares deeply about uh, making sure that America stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel. But also, on top of that, making sure Israel has the resources it needs to finish the job and to win the war. And that means getting the aid package, the supplemental aid package that Israel desperately needs in order to rearm itself and to replace the Iron Dome batteries and munitions and things like that. Make sure it gets the funds it needs to finish the job, and that's critically important. And then, as I'm sure you're wrestling with in Australia, as are Jewish communities all across the country, the rise in anti-Semitism is a critical issue that we're focusing on. It's something that's been, I've never seen in my lifetime here in the States, and it just breaks my heart. And we're seeing it all around the globe, and that's at the forefront of where the community is in terms of the issues that are important. And then also we have an immigration crisis that we're in the middle of right now. There's deep concern about America's safety with an unsecured border, about bad actors and terrorists and folks getting into the United States who will cause havoc and cause the loss of human life. So everybody is deeply troubled by what's happening down in the South and the border down there. And I think those are going to be, a lot of the key issues for the Jewish community come November and our election.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you for joining me for this interview, and we're wishing you much success in what you do with the Republican Jewish Coalition.
Yeah, Robert, thank you, and hopefully I get to come visit you guys in person at some point. Love Australia and just the great work that you do. So thank you for having me.